car ride with my 19-year-old best friend until he touched where he shouldn't, and this happened. I never thought a simple road trip would change the way I saw him and myself. The air was warm, the road stretched endlessly before us, and the car was filled with our laughter, our music, and that kind of comfort that only best friends know. But sometimes comfort can blur lines. Sometimes a look lingers too long, or a joke lands with a weight you can't quite explain. That afternoon, when his hand moved in a way I didn't expect, the silence in the car was louder than the music we had just been singing to. My heart raced. My thoughts collided. And suddenly the boy I thought I knew better than anyone felt like a mystery I wasn't ready to solve. Yet, I couldn't stop myself from wanting to know what came next. This is a story of a journey that started on an open highway, but quickly became a journey inward, into feelings I had never dared to admit, and into a connection I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Every mile brought us closer to something neither of us had planned, but both of us felt. Stay with me until the end of the story. You'll understand how a single touch can change everything. And if you've ever wondered what it means to truly listen to your heart, maybe this road trip will make you think twice about the lines you've drawn in your own life. If you want more stories that stir emotions and make you reflect, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. The highway stretched endlessly in front of us, a ribbon of faded asphalt glowing under the late summer sun. My old sedan hummed along, steady but not exactly smooth, its engine vibrating to the steering wheel. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other drumming restlessly against my thigh in rhythm with the music spilling out of speakers. It was just the two of us, me and Ethan, on what was supposed to be a simple trip. Two best friends, 19 and carefree, chasing a weekend of freedom before the weight of adulthood pinned us down for good. "Man, you drive like my grandma," Ethan teased, leaning back in the passenger seat, his blonde hair catching golden flecks of sunlight. He shoved another handful of chips into his mouth and grinned at me with the kind of ease that always made my chest feel lighter. "Your grandma probably drives better than this car," I shot back, smirking. But my voice carried more edge than humor, because the truth was, I wasn't nervous about the car. I was nervous about being alone with him for hours. No one else around to drown out the thoughts I'd been trying to bury for months. It had started so subtly, those extra seconds when I caught myself staring at him while he laughed, the way my stomach tightened whenever he leaned close to show me something on his phone, or how my heart always raced when his shoulder brushed mine. I told myself it was just admiration, just friendship, just the comfort of having someone who knew me better than anyone else. But now, sealed inside this moving metal box with miles of road ahead, there was no denying the pull that had been growing stronger with every passing day. Ethan stretched his legs, his foot brushing against mine near the gear shift. "So, how long until we get there?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes flicked toward me with a look I couldn't quite read. "Couple of hours," I said. My voice was steady, but inside, my chest felt tight. That accidental touch, or maybe not accidental at all, lingered longer in my mind than it should have. We passed fields of tall grass swaying under the wind, their green fading into the dry gold of late summer. Every so often, Ethan would adjust the radio, switching from one station to another, humming along to songs, his voice low, almost teasing. I couldn't help noticing how close his hand came to mine on the center console. At one point, he turned down the volume and asked, "Do you ever think about, I don't know, how different things might be if we weren't just friends?" The question hit me like a jolt of electricity. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my palms sweating. I tried to laugh it off. "Where's that coming from?" He shrugged, his gaze fixed out the window. "Just curious." His tone was light, but the way his jaw tensed told me there was more beneath the surface. I wanted to press him, to ask what he meant, but I was too afraid of the answer. Instead, I changed the subject, pointing at a billboard for a diner up ahead. "We should stop soon. I'm starving." But the question lingered. It clung to me, rattled around in my chest, refusing to let go. By the time we pulled into the diner's gravel parking lot, the silence between us had stretched thin, filled only with the hum of the engine and the cicadas buzzing in the distance. I parked the car, killed the ignition, and finally dared to look at him. His blue eyes were already on me, steady, searching. Inside the diner, everything smelled like grease and coffee, the kind of place where the waitresses had seen it all and the booths were patched with duct tape. We slid into a booth by the window. Ethan ordered a burger. I got pancakes, because comfort food felt safer than anything else. The conversation was easy enough at first. We joked about high school, about people we hadn't seen in months, about our plans for fall. But beneath every word, there was an undercurrent, an invisible thread tugging tighter and tighter. When the waitress left us with our food, Ethan leaned closer, his voice softer now. "You never answer my question." I froze, fork halfway in my mouth. "What question?" "You know what I mean," he said, his tone firmer this time. "What if we weren't just friends?" My stomach nodded. I could hear the sound of my heartbeat, louder than the clatter of dishes in the background. "Ethan," I started, but the words died on my tongue. His eyes held mine, unwavering. Then, almost as if he realized he'd pushed too far, he leaned back and took a bite of his burger, pretending nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake it. The rest of the meal felt like walking a tightrope. Back in the car, the sun had started to dip, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The road stretched darker now, and the music filled the silence once more. I thought maybe the moment had passed, maybe he'd let it go, but then it happened. We were driving along a long, empty stretch of highway when his hand shifted on the console. Slowly, deliberately, it brushed against mine. My breath caught, and I told myself not to move, not to react. But his hand didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers grazed lower, just enough to make my pulse race and my grip on the wheel tighten. I turned my head just slightly, and he was already looking at me, his lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile I had ever seen. The car kept moving forward, but inside, everything felt suspended, frozen in that impossible second. I didn't know if I should slam on the brakes, confront him, or let whatever was about to happen unfold. And that's when he whispered, low enough that it barely carried over the music, "You're not stopping me, why?" The hum of the engine was steady, but inside me, everything was in chaos. His words still echoed in my head. "You're not stopping me, why?" As if the road itself had repeated them 1,000 times. My knuckles tightened around the steering wheel, my chest rising and falling too fast, and for a moment I thought I'd swerve off the highway. I forced my eyes forward, the yellow lines flashing past in hypnotic rhythm, but I could feel him watching me, not just looking, studying. Ethan had always been bold, always teasing, but this was different. This was him stepping into a place I carefully avoided, a place I feared and craved at the same time. "You're quiet now," he said finally, his voice calm, almost playful. "That means you're thinking too much." I swallowed hard. "You caught me off guard." "Did I?" His hand still lingered near mine, not pressing, not demanding, but close enough that the heat of it spread through me like fire. "Or did I just say out loud what you've been thinking for a while?" I couldn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us was louder than any confession. For miles, the only sounds were the soft strum of guitar from the radio and the tires humming against the road. My throat felt dry, and my palms slick against the wheel. I tried to focus on the horizon, on the fading light, but every nerve in my body was tuned to him. His breathing, his movements, the way his legs shifted just enough that his knee brushed mine. Finally, I forced a laugh, though it cracked in my throat. "You like making things complicated, don't you?" "Complicated?" He leaned back, resting his head against the seat, his smile faint but undeniable. "I think I'm making things clearer." I shook my head, but the truth was I didn't want clarity. Clarity meant facing everything I denied, the nights I replayed his laughter in my head, the warmth that lingered whenever we touched, the jealousy that flared when I saw him with someone else. Clarity meant admitting I wanted more. The sun dipped fully behind the horizon, and darkness wrapped around the car. I flipped on the headlights, their beams cutting through the night. Out here, the highway felt like its own world. No other cars, no towns, just us moving forward into something unknown. Out of nowhere, Ethan turned down the music. His voice was steady, almost too steady. Do you ever think about me differently? My chest tightened. Differently how? You know how. He shifted in his seat, leaning just slightly closer. Not as your best friend. Not as the guy who's always been around. I mean as more than that. My mouth went dry. I opened it, closed it again, then finally managed, sometimes. It was the first honest thing I'd said all night. The admission hung heavy between us. He exhaled, long and slow, and for a second I thought that was it, that the moment would pass. But then he reached out again, his fingers grazing mine more deliberately this time. I didn't pull away. I knew it, he whispered. I should have stopped him, I told myself. I should have said something. Should have made a joke. Should have turned up the music and drowned the whole thing out. But instead, I let my hand stay there. Skin against skin, a spark I couldn't deny. My heart pounded harder than the bass line of any song. Then headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, bright, fast, closing in. A truck barreled up behind us, its horn blaring, as if the driver had a vendetta against the night. I jerked the wheel to the side, swerving onto the shoulder just in time as the massive vehicle roared past, shaking my car in its wake. Jesus! I gasped, my chest heaving. Ethan's hand grabbed my arm, steadying me. His grip was firm, grounding. Hey, you okay? I nodded, but the truth was I wasn't. My body trembled, not just from a near miss, but from the way his touch anchored me. The way his concern in that moment felt like more than friendship. We sat in silence for a while after that, both of us shaken. The road was emptier now, the night darker. Finally, Ethan broke it. You could have died back there, he said softly. And all I could think about was, what if I never said anything? His words hit harder than the truck. I glanced at him, my breath catching. The moonlight from the window cut across his face, highlighting the curve of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. He wasn't joking. He wasn't teasing. He meant every word. Ethan, I started, but my voice faltered. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to take everything we'd been, years of friendship, shared secrets, late-night talks, and fit it into this new reality he was creating with a few sentences. He leaned closer, his voice low, almost breaking. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't feel it too. The car felt smaller now, the air heavier. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, but my resolve was slipping. I couldn't tell him he was wrong, because he wasn't. I don't know what I feel, I admitted, my voice rough, my throat tight. I just know I'm scared. His eyes softened. Then let me be scared with you. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world outside was silent, only the hum of the engine filling the space. And then, slowly, deliberately, his hand slid higher, not rushed, not careless, but with a certainty that made my pulse race out of control. I gasped, the wheel veering slightly before I steadied it. Ethan, don't stop me, he said again, his voice trembling this time. Not with fear, but with hope. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I knew was that the line we had danced around for years had been crossed, and there was no going back. But just as the night exploded into red and blue, the flashing lights painted Ethan's face in jagged strokes, every second making his features look different, guilty, scared, vulnerable. My stomach twisted into knots as I slowed the car, easing it onto the gravel shoulder. The siren cut through the silence, demanding attention, demanding obedience. Great, I muttered, though my voice cracked. Ethan's hand, which had lingered dangerously close only moments before, retreated in an instant. He leaned back in his seat, staring out the window, his jaw clenched. The intimacy that had nearly consumed us vanished, replaced by the harsh reality of authority, closing in. The cruiser pulled up behind us, its headlights flooding the interior of my car. I could feel the weight of the officer's gaze even before he stepped out. My chest pounded so hard I thought the sound would give us away. Not about speeding, not about anything illegal, but about what we'd almost done. What I almost wanted. Relax, Ethan whispered, though he didn't look relaxed at all. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Easy for you to say. The officer appeared at my window, a flashlight beam cutting across my face. I squinted, rolling it down with shaking fingers. "Evening," the officer said, his voice clipped but calm. "You were swerving back there. Everything all right?" I forced a nod. "Yeah, sorry. A truck ran me off the road earlier." Still a little shaken. The flashlight drifted across the interior, pausing briefly on Ethan. His expression was carefully blank, the kind of neutrality he used whenever we got into trouble as kids. The officer studied us both for a long moment, then sighed. "License and registration." My hands fumbled as I dug to the glove compartment. Pulling out the worn envelope, I handed it over, praying he wouldn't notice how much they shook. The officer scanned the papers, then leaned a little closer. "You boys headed somewhere in particular?" "Just a trip," I said quickly. "Weekend away." He nodded, though his eyes lingered, sharp and suspicious. After what felt like forever, he straightened up. "All right, keep it steady. No more drifting across lanes. I don't want to scrape you off the pavement tonight." "Yes, sir," I muttered. He handed my papers back, tapped the side of the car, and finally walked away. Moments later, the siren shut off, the lights dimmed, and the cruiser merged back onto the highway. The darkness swallowed us again, leaving nothing but the sound of my shaky breathing. I exhaled, long and loud. "God." Ethan let out a sharp laugh, more nervous than amused. Thought he was going to haul us out for a second. I shoved the papers back into the glove compartment, my hands trembling. "Yeah, me too." The road stretched quiet again, the adrenaline slowly bleeding away. But the silence between us wasn't the same. It wasn't relief. It was weight. Heavy, suffocating weight. "You swerved because of me?" Ethan said suddenly, his voice low. I glanced at him, startled. "What?" "Back there, before the truck. You swerved because I..." He cut himself off, shaking his head. "Forget it." "No." I pressed, my throat dry. "Say it." He turned toward me, his blue eyes shining faintly in the dim light of the dashboard. "Because I touched you. Because I couldn't stop myself." The words hit me harder than the officer's flashlight. There was no teasing now, no jokes to hide behind. Just truth, raw and terrifying. I swallowed. "You don't know what that did to me." His lips curved, not into a smile, but something caught between pain and relief. "Then tell me." But I couldn't. Not yet. The words jammed in my throat, trapped between fear and desire. Instead, I focused on the road, though every fiber of me burned to look at him again. Miles passed. He didn't push, didn't speak. Just sat there, silent, his presence louder than anything. Finally, I broke. "Ethan, if you keep doing that..." I trailed off, unsure how to finish. "If I keep doing what?" he asked, his tone sharp but trembling underneath. "Crossing lines." "Lines you drew," he shot back. "Lines you've been erasing every time you look at me like that." I bit down on my lip, my chest tight. He was right. I hated that he was right. The road dipped, winding into a stretch of forest. The trees loomed tall on either side, their shadows swallowing the car. It felt like driving through a tunnel of secrets. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring straight ahead. "I don't want to ruin us," he said finally. His voice was softer now, almost breaking. "But I can't keep pretending either." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was raw with everything I want to say, but didn't dare. Then, as if the universe couldn't let us sit in that fragile honesty for long, a sudden flash of movement darted across the road. A deer. Its eyes caught the headlights, glowing like two burning coals. "Look out!" Ethan shouted. I slammed the brakes. The car screeched, tires skidding against the asphalt. The world tilted, the sound of rubber burning filling my ears. Ethan's hand grabbed my arm, both of us lurching forward as the deer bounded off into the woods. The car shuddered to a halt, smoke curling from the hood. My chest heaved, my pulse a hammer inside my skull. Ethan's hand was still gripping me, tight, desperate. Our eyes met in the dark, and for the first time all night, I couldn't look away. The smell of burnt rubber hung heavy in the air. My heart was still racing, my hands welded to the steering wheel, but the silence that followed was even louder than the screech of tires had been. Ethan's grip on my arm hadn't loosened, his fingers digging into me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. "You almost killed us," he whispered, though his voice shook as much as mine. I forced a breath, my chest heaving. It wasn't me, it was a deer. But even I knew that wasn't the whole truth. The deer had been real, sure, but my head hadn't been where it should have been. I'd been lost in him. I finally looked at him, really looked. His face was pale, his blonde hair messy from jerking forward, his blue eyes wide and unsettled. But there was something else there too, something raw, like a dam that couldn't hold any longer. "You scared me," he said, softer this time. I scared myself. I admitted. The car idled in the middle of the road, engine humming like it didn't know whether to give out or keep dragging us forward. Then headlights appeared behind us again, a pair of glowing orbs cutting through the trees. They grew brighter fast, too fast. A truck, another one, barreling straight toward us. "Move!" Ethan shouted. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car jolted forward, tires squealing, and for a second I thought we wouldn't make it. The truck blared its horn, flying past us, close enough that the entire car shook from its wake. I felt the vibration in my bones. By the time I steadied the car again, my shirt was plastered to my back with sweat. Ethan's hand was still braced against the dash, his breathing harsh. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Are we cursed tonight or something?" I forced a shaky laugh, though it died quickly. Feels like it. We drove in silence for a while, both of us shaken, the forest pressing on either side, the world outside just shadows and whispers of wind. My thoughts spiraled. I couldn't decide which was scarier, the near accidents or the truth pressing between us like another passenger in the car. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "If something happened to you tonight," his voice cracked. He paused, swallowed, then went on. "If you died and I never told you, I don't think I could live with that." I glanced at him, my throat tight. "Told me what?" His jaw clenched, his gaze fixed on the dark road ahead. "That I've been feeling this for a long time. That I think about you in ways I shouldn't. That every time you laugh or look at me a certain way, I wonder if I'm imagining it or if you feel it too." My grip tightened on the wheel. His words were everything I'd wanted and everything I feared. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "Why now?" "Because almost losing you twice in one night makes you realize what's worth the risk." The confession hit me like a punch. I wanted to respond, to admit that I'd been carrying the same secret. But before I could speak, the dashboard lit up with a harsh red glow. The check engine light. No, I muttered, slapping the wheel. The temperature gauge spiked. Smoke curling from under the hood. "You've got to be kidding," Ethan groaned. I steered the car onto a small turnout, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The engine sputtered, coughed, and finally died. Silence. Real silence this time. The kind that made you realize how far away you were from everything. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, sighing. Perfect. Stranded in the middle of nowhere. I shoved the door open and stepped out. The night air was cooler than I expected, damp with the smell of pine and earth. Crickets chirped somewhere in the darkness, a mocking soundtrack to our disaster. Smoke still drifted from the hood. Ethan joined me on the shoulder, kicking at a loose stone. "So what now? Call a tow? Wait until morning." I pulled out my phone, but the screen showed no service. I held it up, tried to find a bar, but nothing. My stomach sank. "Looks like we're on our own," I said. He laughed bitterly. "Figures." We leaned against the hood, the metal warm against my back. For a while, neither of us spoke. The stars above were endless, scattered across the sky in patterns I couldn't name. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt heavy, like the night itself was pressing down on us. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if we're supposed to end up here? Like this exact spot, this exact night?" I turned to him, my brows furrowed. "That's a weird question." "Yeah, well, so is falling for your best friend." The words lodged in my chest. My breath hitched, and I didn't know what to say. He turned to face me, his expression stripped of all the teasing, all the bravado. Just honesty. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. "But I can't keep pretending it's not there." The night stretched around us, infinite and suffocating. I wanted to respond, to close the distance, but just then, the sound of crunching gravel echoed from the road. Headlights swung into the turnout, blinding us. A pickup truck rolled up slowly, its engine rumbling low. Two men sat in the front seat, silhouettes against the glare. The truck stopped a few feet away, the door creaking open. "Y'all need help?" A voice called, deep and wary. Ethan stiffened beside me. The night wasn't ours anymore. The intimacy had shattered, replaced by something sharper, more dangerous. And as the men stepped out of the truck, boots hitting the gravel, I realized this night wasn't done testing us. Not even close. The two men approached slowly, their boots crunching against the gravel. For a moment, I forgot to breathe, stranded in the middle of nowhere, our car dead, the night already charged with tension, and now two strangers sizing us up under the cold glow of headlights. "You boys all right?" One of them asked, his accent rough, his stance cautious but not unfriendly. He looked to be in his 40s, wearing a cap stained with grease. The other leaned against the truck door, arms crossed, his gaze sharper. Ethan straightened, his voice steady though his shoulders were tight. "Car overheated. No signal out here." The man in the cap nodded. "Figured. This stretch eats engines alive. Lucky we came by." They offered to tow us into town. For a second, I hesitated, visions of every horror story I'd ever read flashing in my mind. But the truth was, we didn't have a choice. I glanced at Ethan, and he gave me a small nod. "All right," I said. "Thanks." While they hitched up the car, Ethan stood close to me, his arm brushing mine in a quiet reminder that even in this uncertainty, we weren't alone. When we climbed into the back seat of their truck, the cab smelled of gasoline and leather. The men spoke little, just a low murmur of directions and road names. Ethan leaned close, his lips brushing the shell of my ear as he whispered, "We'll be fine." The words should have reassured me, but it was the warmth of his breath, the softness of his tone, that nearly unraveled me. I turned my head slightly, and in the dim light, our eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world outside disappeared. By the time we rolled into a small town, the tension had shifted from danger to exhaustion. The men dropped us at a dusty garage, promising the mechanic would check the car in the morning. Then they were gone, their taillights swallowed by the night. Ethan and I sat on the hood of the dead car, the silence now gentler, like the storm had finally broken. Above us, the stars burned brighter than I'd ever seen, endless and untouchable. I thought we weren't going to make it back there. I admitted, "Me too." His voice cracked, but then he laughed softly. And all I could think about was, if this was it, if this night ended us, I didn't want the last thing you remember to be silence. I looked at him, my chest aching. "So you had to push." He smiled faintly. I had to tell the truth. The words hung between us, heavy and fragile. I took a breath, my decision finally clear. "Ethan, I feel it too. I've been fighting it, hiding it, pretending it was just in my head. But it's not." His eyes widened and softened, as if he'd been holding his breath for months and finally let it go. He didn't rush, didn't speak. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing mine. This time, I didn't pull away. The world was quiet except for our breathing, the distant hum of a neon sign buzzing above the garage. Slowly, deliberately, I leaned closer. Our foreheads touched first, tentative and trembling, before the distance closed completely. The kiss was nothing like I imagined. It wasn't fireworks or music swelling in the background. It was quiet, messy, real. It was his lips against mine, hesitant but certain, like a secret finally finding its place in the open. When we pulled back, both of us were shaking. He laughed nervously. "Took you long enough." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. Guess I needed a near-death experience. We stayed there for what felt like hours, sitting on the hood of a broken car in a forgotten town, holding on to something neither of us could deny anymore. The night hadn't gone the way I planned. It had been chaos, fear, confessions ripped out in the dark. But as Ethan's hand found mine, steady and sure, I realized maybe that's what love really was. Messy, terrifying, but worth every risk. Because sometimes the road doesn't take you where you expect. Sometimes it takes you exactly where you need to go. That night changed me. It taught me that silence can be louder than words, that fear can blind you to what you've been needing all along. And it taught me that sometimes the scariest risks, the ones that could break everything, are the only ones worth taking. Have you ever held back from saying what you really felt? From admitting what your heart was screaming? Maybe it's time to stop waiting. If this story made you feel something, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Because sometimes the next story you hear might just be the one that gives you courage to write your own.